Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be talking to you about concentrated awareness versus diffuse awareness. So the idea of concentrated awareness and diffuse awareness is something that I learned years ago when I was studying Jungian psychology, just kind of as a hobby. For about a year I got really into it, and my favorite Jungian author is Jean Raffa. And in one of her books, she was talking about how there are two different types of awareness, concentrated awareness and diffuse awareness. So I was recently reflecting on this, and I figured that I would do a video sort of on my own reflections about the distinction between these two things and basically how to cultivate each of those states of awareness. To explain the idea of concentrated awareness versus diffuse awareness, I want to make an analogy to light. So if you think about diffuse awareness, you want to think about diffuse awareness as being like sunlight. It lights up the whole entire space. And concentrated awareness as being like sunlight that's being shined through a magnifying glass and being targeted at a very specific point. So diffuse awareness is like being present with reality in its entirety, like as a whole thing in general. And concentrated awareness is being honed into one specific aspect of reality in extreme depth and clarity and focus. And these two things kind of play off of one another as well. And if we want to relate it to yin and yang, you want to think about concentrated awareness as being very yang because it's very penetrative. It actually goes into a sensation, whereas diffuse awareness is very yin because it envelops. So as yang traits generally are more focused on in our society because our society is very yang oriented, concentrated awareness is worked on a lot more than diffuse awareness. Concentrated awareness is something that you would use like if you're going forward with a goal and you're trying to basically have a singular direction, a single pointed focus at something. So most of us have had to, in some way or another, cultivate the skill of concentrated awareness, like when we work on something, like if we're working on a single task. And this is really the most effective way to do work. Studies have shown that human beings really aren't that good at multitasking, even if we think that we are. You know, generally speaking, being able to concentrate your focus on one task at a time and to go toward one goal at a time and sort of build upon that in a very streamlined and directed kind of way is very important to the type of work that we do in our society. So you want to think about concentrated awareness as being a very streamlined type of awareness where you're sort of editing out all of the irrelevant information to the task at hand and you're just focusing on what's important. You're sort of editing everything else out. And in fact, whenever you're looking at something or whenever you're taking in sounds, your experience tends to naturally edit out information that it deems irrelevant. And so in this, you're trying to just be aware of what's the most relevant to the task at hand. Now, diffuse awareness is the sort of opposite of concentrated awareness. It is the general awareness of everything that you're experiencing right now. On the flip side, diffuse awareness is basically concentrated awareness's exact opposite. So it's a type of awareness where you're not really focused in super strong on one aspect of reality, but you're trying to hold the entirety of reality in your awareness itself. So you could relate this to, like, you know, when people say be in the present moment, you know, oftentimes it's very confusing to think, oh, how do I be in the present moment? You know, because you're always like trying to pick one aspect or another of reality to be with if you're exercising concentrated awareness. But with diffuse awareness, you're trying to get just a general illumination of your internal and external experience. Now, one thing that I want to mention is because I had mentioned that concentrated awareness is being focused on one thing at a time to do like a task or something like that. So with diffuse awareness, it would be a mistake to think that multitasking is a form of diffuse awareness. Multitasking is kind of concentrated awareness done poorly, but diffuse awareness is more of just a general awareness that's not really doing related but being related. So this is more of a big picture awareness, and it leaves room for the intuition. So it's like if you think of concentrated awareness as being really contracted and focused, you want to think about diffuse awareness as being wide open. And in its wide openness, you're sort of allowing things to come up from the unconscious to the conscious mind. So with diffuse awareness, you are not editing the experience as much. So like I said, with concentrated awareness, we have a tendency to edit things out of our experience that we consider irrelevant or maybe in some cases harmful or dangerous. But we tend to sort of edit our experience in this way. If we're developing diffuse awareness and we want a higher degree of diffuse awareness, we're making a concerted effort not to edit things out of our awareness. We're trying to get a really, really big blanket picture of what's actually going on in the present moment right now. So if you can remember back to childhood and you remember like just that kind of sense of wonderment and just how much easier it really was to learn and pick up on things when you were a child, it's because children are in a state of diffuse awareness. What creates concentrated awareness is we've kind of conditioned our mind to go in a particular direction. Children's minds are not conditioned yet. The indoctrination process is still happening. So they still have just a general more openness of perspective, and they're not so used to sort of channeling their awareness in particular ways, and they don't know necessarily what's important and what's not important, so they don't edit it as much out of their experience. So if you recall that feeling, of sort of things being new and magical, that's because children sort of abide in this state of diffuse awareness. Now, you can't will yourself to a state of diffuse awareness like you can with concentrated awareness. Concentrated awareness is very additive. You are actually directing your will towards something. You're trying to keep your focus directly on a single point. With diffuse awareness, it's a matter of surrendering and letting go. Because in the letting go, awareness naturally sort of diffuses out. You just have to sort of let go of the tendency to focus your awareness. So there was a type of meditation that I heard of called do nothing meditation. I think it was Adyashanti that came up with it, and I also heard of it through actualize.org. I'm not sure exactly the origin of this. It probably goes back thousands of years, but just from what I heard of it. But basically, this is kind of that type of idea where you're just you're trying not to get focused in on a thought. You're trying not to apply that concentrated awareness. So you're just trying to let it go and to just let yourself be. Now, before I go on much further, I want to make one caveat and say that basically, whether it's concentrated awareness or diffuse awareness, awareness is always 100% whole. But the thing is that we often don't process the whole thing in our conscious mind. A lot of it gets just relegated to the unconscious, and we sort of automatically go through the motions. And so if I say that, you're going to cultivate diffuse awareness or you're going to cultivate concentrated awareness, it doesn't mean that you're actually adding things to your experience of reality. It means that you are actually just realizing what's already there, whether it be going in depth with something in the case of concentrated awareness, or being more broad and general and expansive with something just in the case of diffuse awareness. Alright, so some benefits of concentrated awareness is that basically you can go really, really deep with your concentration into one particular aspect of reality. And another good thing about it is that it has utility. You can use it to do activities and you can use it to pursue goals. And it's an indispensable quality to be able to have if you want to actually make things happen in your life. Because, doing something well requires an extreme degree of focus. So it's a very doing-based kind of awareness. Now, diffuse awareness, not quite as much on the doing aspect. That's more just the awareness in general. But concentrated awareness can also work toward the awareness in general level as well. So Vipassana meditation, which is also called insight meditation, is where you're choosing one object of focus. Usually it is the breath on the rims of the nostrils, but it can also be like a visual object or some other type of object. Once you get to a certain point with it, insights will come up. So you sort of access wisdom through sort of penetrating things down deep to where you have a very strong awareness of things that you would normally not pick up on. So some benefits of diffuse awareness, because it is such a receptive and intuitive state, life sort of hits you more. So basically, you have, like, it helps you sort of develop a sensitivity, and life becomes like layers deeper and richer that you just didn't experience before. And you don't have to actually try to do this. It's, like I said, it's more of a process of elimination. But if you cultivate this ability, you know, reality, your experience of it just becomes more interesting. So if we think about concentrated awareness as sort of diving down so deep into reality that we can receive insight from that, you want to think about like diffuse awareness as like you have such an awareness spread out over this entire experience that eventually it gets deep enough for you to access some of those same bits of wisdom. And so one thing that I noticed from times when I've been in a state of diffuse awareness is that like intuition just sort of comes at me from unexpected places, like just looking at people and actions and activities and being able to see connections between those things and like other systems that relate to it. So like being able to look at a social pattern or look at a social interaction between two people and to see a larger social pattern that informs that social interaction. And again, this isn't done with thought. This is just an insight coming up, just kind of bubbling up into your experience. Now, the reason why reality gets so many layers deeper and richer is not that suddenly you're able to focus more on them and see them. It's that you're just not editing stuff out of your experience. You're experiencing more of the whole entire thing. So it's also important to create sort of a balance between concentrated awareness and diffuse awareness, because if you only focus on one and you don't focus on the other, then you can end up with sort of an imbalance type of effect. So some drawbacks of only focusing on concentrated awareness would be like, let's say if you're focusing on something and you receive an insight of some kind, it really only works if your worldview actually allows for it to take root. So for example, if some insight comes up from a state of concentrated awareness because you focus so deeply, but you haven't really sort of expanded yourself beyond your dogma or beyond your thoughts about the way things are or should be, then it's not really going to give you the type of benefit that you would be wanting from it. Also, concentrated awareness can sort of impede the ability to surrender, because like if you think about, like, let's say an addiction to thought. So if you're somebody like myself who has a thought addiction where you're just constantly thinking and thinking and thinking all the time, you know, and you're constantly wrapped up in that, that's a form of concentrated awareness. And in a sense, it's good that you're able to focus on your thoughts, but at the same time, if you have not sort of cultivated the ability to let go, then that's going to be problematic. Alright, so some drawbacks of diffuse awareness if you haven't sort of cultivated concentrated awareness, or of course, diffuse awareness doesn't really have a lot of utility for getting actions done directly. Now, of course, it can help, you know, any kind of awareness can help you with, you know, your daily practical tasks, but it really does need like a focus. You need to be able to draw your attention into one point and to focus it towards something. So if you only have diffuse awareness, then that's going to be an issue there. Now, one of the main things about diffuse awareness is because we, in modern society, we don't get as much practice with it. And so we're not used to being able to just let go of things. We're used to sort of being able to hone ourselves into something, but we have less practice with letting go. So it's just a little bit more difficult. Also, cultivating diffuse awareness can be very, very uncomfortable, because if you're letting go of, let's say, your thoughts as they come up or different distractions, sometimes our distractions are in place because we're trying to repress things out of our experience. And so, you know, there can be some scary things down there that we might not want to face, and that's the reason why we incessantly think all the time, or always have to distract ourselves, or go on social media and scroll forever. So these things, they take a certain degree of concentrated awareness, even though they're kind of like, they're not really beneficial activities, but they do take concentrated awareness, and it sort of shifts your focus away from, you know, what's underneath. So when you're cultivating diffuse awareness, all of a sudden you're letting go of those coping mechanisms. And even though in the long term that's going to be beneficial, it's still going to be maybe a scary or uncomfortable or even a very emotional experience that you might not have been anticipating. All right, so let me go ahead and go over how to cultivate concentrated awareness. Now, Leo on actualized.org did a video a couple weeks ago about, you know, basically how to develop the concentration, and he made some really good points in that, so if you want to check that video out, definitely do. But Vipassana meditation can be really, really good for sort of being able to hone your focus. And so when you sit down for Vipassana meditation, you're going to choose one object of focus. I choose, usually, when I'm doing Vipassana meditation, the sensation of the breath on the nostrils, you know, and that way I can kind of like just focus on that sensation and sort of edit everything else out. So that sort of becomes, that sensation becomes the universe itself in a way. And so I'm really focused in on that. I'm trying to notice every single little movement, and I'm trying to sort of disassociate it from my other sensory fields. So I'm just focusing on that sensation. Now, some people like to do visual meditations or sound meditations or any other sensory experience meditation, but it should be something that you're able to be observant and mindful of. All right, so how to cultivate diffuse awareness. Basically, well, first off, it doesn't hurt to have the ability for focused awareness in the first place, because the more ability you have for focused awareness, you can then notice when you're focusing in and sort of editing out from your experience. So just having an awareness of what the opposite is from diffuse awareness can help you recognize when you're doing it and say, oh, now it's time to take my hands off the wheel. So if you're doing it throughout your day, you know, you just become aware of when you're focused into one particular thing, and then you try to let that thing go. And you're not necessarily trying to sort of expand your awareness to the whole sensory field. It's just in lieu of actually clamping on to one sensation or one experience or the other. Diffuse awareness will just kind of naturally come about. But there are also things that you can do during meditation where you can actually practice trying to get the entire sensory field into your experience. So basically, you would want to choose maybe like the field of body sensation, so your tactile field, and instead of focusing just on one single thing like you would during Vipassana meditation, like I said, with the sensation of the breath on the nostrils, you want to try to get the entirety of the sensations within your body, within your awareness. And so this will take sort of like some stretching to actually do this. And it's very, very difficult for me to do when I've tried. So it's very, very easy to focus in on one small, simple sensation. But when it comes to every sensation in the body, you know, we have a tendency to, like, if you notice your awareness kind of goes to different parts of the body, and then you don't realize that, oh, maybe my thigh is touching the chair down here, or maybe my pinky toe is curled up and kind of crunched up against the floor, or, oh, maybe I'm feeling like the breeze on my cheeks, and maybe the sensation of my hair is sitting on my head has a particular sensation. Oh, and I'm just now becoming aware of this bracelet that I'm wearing. That's making a sensation right there. So basically, there are a lot of like little mini sensations that your awareness just sort of edits out, because in day-to-day life, you know, it's like it's very utilitarian. It wants to focus on just getting certain tasks done. But if we're trying to cultivate diffuse awareness, in meditation we can kind of practice sort of spreading the awareness to more aspects of reality. So in doing this process, you can even start to pick up insights on how the mind actually kind of subtly edits things out. Because once you notice it, you're like, oh yeah, I've been experiencing this the whole time, and I maybe had a faint awareness of it, but I definitely didn't really realize it. It had gone to sort of my unconscious experience. So you can kind of get some insights as to how you work in that way as well. So when you do this practice, you might want to start with like one sensory field. Try to get one of your sensory fields into your entire awareness. So I recommend, like I said, the tactile field, but then you can also try to do it in tandem with other fields. So maybe once you have gotten a certain degree of mastery over experiencing the entire tactile field, you can maybe try it in tandem with the visual field and then the auditory field and so on and so on. So I think that cultivating diffuse awareness is like a really, really important sort of skill that isn't cultivated as much as it should be. I had mentioned earlier how children are sort of in this state of diffuse awareness, and it's why they can absorb things so easily, and it's why life is magical to them. And so I consider this a very, very important thing to learn, because once you get into that state of receptivity and openness, then you can start to sort of get in touch with that sort of innocence that you had as a child. And there's wisdom in that innocence, because I think most people tend to believe that, oh yeah, well, that happened when I was a child, but then I grew up, and everybody sort of loses that, and that's just the way that things are. But I'm telling you that I have experienced that as an adult, and it doesn't ever go away. Your innocence is never fully lost. And so when you get into the state of diffuse awareness, it creates enough space for these types of things to actually come back up into your conscious mind and to come back up into your experience. And just overall, you experience more energy, like actual regular energy. You're not as tired as you used to be, simply because you're not having to sort of work as hard to keep things out of your experience and to edit things down, because that actually takes a lot of brain power to do. So, cultivating diffuse awareness over the long run is very, very helpful on many different levels. And hopefully the idea of diffuse awareness sort of might clear up some confusion when somebody says, oh, just be present, be here in the now. Because it's like, what aspect of now should I even be here with? And it's like, there is a way to actually just let go and to be just generally present. So that's all I have for you for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead, click the like button below and subscribe. And until next time, keep becoming more you.